The unexpected arrival. In the quiet depths of the galaxy, there was a sector known for its peaceful nature. For centuries, no warships, no battles, and no invasions had disturbed this calm. It was a safe place where trade ships passed through, and travelers could rest without fear. The sector had always been neutral, and its people had grown used to the calm. But that peaceful existence was about to be shattered. One day, a strange signal pierced through the calm. It wasn't a simple message, nor a distress call. It was a warning. The alert came from the outer boundaries of the sector, far beyond the known ships and stations. The message was clear, though its source was unknown. A human warship has entered the sector. At first, no one believed it. The humans had vanished long ago, their empire destroyed in a war many centuries ago. There had been whispers, rumors that some humans had survived, but most thought those were just stories, legends passed down to frighten children. No one had ever seen a human warship in action. No one had seen anything that powerful since the fall of their empire. The station commanders, the military officers, and the leaders of various factions in the sector quickly gathered to discuss the threat. Their minds raced, but no one had an answer. Was it really a human warship? Could it be some kind of mistake? The humans had always been known for their strength, their advanced technology, and their relentless determination. But why now? Why had they come after all these years? The system's radar showed something large moving fast through deep space. It wasn't a small ship, and it wasn't just a single vessel. This was something much bigger, much more dangerous. It was closing in on the sector fast, and no one could stop it. The readings on their scanners were showing strange energy signatures, signatures unlike anything the sector had ever detected. This wasn't just a ship. This was a warship, an enormous warship, and it was heading directly for the heart of the sector. The leaders were in shock. They tried to contact the ship, sending out messages to ask who it was and why it was here, but the response was chilling. There was no answer. The silence only confirmed the danger. The ship didn't care about negotiations. It wasn't asking for permission. It was simply on its way. Within moments, the defense systems of the sector were put on high alert. The peaceful inhabitants who once lived their lives without fear now looked to the skies, watching as the strange vessel drew closer. The citizens who had never known war began to feel a deep unease. The warship's sheer size filled the skies of their star systems, blocking out the light from nearby stars. It was as if the darkness had come to take over. "Prepare for impact," the leaders said grimly, giving orders to their fleet. They had no idea what kind of power the human warship possessed, but they knew they had to be ready for anything. Every defense ship in the sector was deployed, but the fear in their hearts was undeniable. Would they be enough? Or would they be wiped out in the blink of an eye? The warship wasn't slowing down. The sector's fleet, though large, seemed tiny in comparison. It was clear this ship was from another time, a time long past. Its design was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The smooth, dark metal glinted in the light of distant stars, its sleek surface giving it the appearance of an unstoppable force. As the ship neared the heart of the sector, it sent another message. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a command. "Clear the sector. We have arrived." The message was broadcast to every corner of the sector, and for the first time in many years, the people of the sector felt real fear. No one knew what the humans wanted, but they knew one thing for sure. They weren't here to negotiate. The warship's path didn't change. It continued toward its destination, unfazed by the warnings or the preparations of the sector's defenses. The ships in the sector prepared for battle, but the leaders knew they were facing an unknown enemy. The human warship, an ancient symbol of a long-gone empire, was now a reality, and its arrival had sent shockwaves through the peaceful sector. As the ship drew nearer, the tension among the people grew. Would they be able to stop it? Would they have to fight? Or would they be forced to surrender to a power far greater than anything they had ever known? For now, all they could do was wait. The warship was coming, and no one knew what would happen next. Would this be the end of their peaceful way of life? Or was this just the beginning of something much bigger? The human legacy. The warship's arrival didn't just stir fear. It also brought back memories of a time long forgotten. The humans, once known throughout the galaxy for their incredible strength, intelligence, and advanced technology, were now little more than a legend. The stories about them were told in hushed voices, passed down from one generation to the next. Many believe the humans had been wiped out in a devastating war centuries ago, their empire destroyed, and their fleets scattered to the stars. But what if those stories were wrong? What if the humans were still out there, waiting for the right moment to return? In the sector's command center, the leaders gathered around the large holographic map, watching as the warship slowly approached. It was impossible to ignore the sense of dread that hung in the air. Could the humans have survived all this time? And if they had, why had they come now? Some of the older officers recalled the days before the war, when the human empire was at its peak. They were a force to be reckoned with, their warships towering over the fleets of any other species. Their technology was far beyond anything anyone else had at the time. Their ships were fast, powerful, and seemingly indestructible. For years, the galaxy had lived in fear of their might, but after the Great War, they vanished. Some said the humans had retreated into the deepest corners of the galaxy. Others believed they were all wiped out. But now, the warship had appeared out of nowhere, and it was headed straight for them. Their legacy cannot be ignored, one of the officers said quietly. We all know the stories. The humans were not just fighters, they were survivors. If they're still out there, they're capable of anything. As the leaders discussed their options, they couldn't ignore the strange energy readings coming from the warship. It was nothing like the ships they had in the sector. This wasn't some ancient relic. No, the warship was alive with energy, its power unimaginable. There was something terrifying about it, something that spoke of both advanced technology and the kind of ruthlessness the humans were once known for. A young officer spoke up, his voice trembling. What if they're not here to fight? What if they've come to rebuild their empire? The room went silent. Rebuilding. The thought sent shivers down everyone's spine. The galaxy had long since moved on from the war with the humans. Other empires had risen and fallen, new alliances had formed, and the galaxy was slowly healing. The idea of the humans returning was too much to comprehend. But even as the officer spoke, another part of his mind couldn't shake the idea that the humans were coming back stronger than before. And if they were, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? But not everyone was worried. Some of the sector's leaders still believed that the humans were nothing more than a myth. They believed that this warship was either a trap or some kind of new military faction using human designs. But as the warship drew closer, the arguments began to fade. The evidence was clear. The ship was real, and it was human. Another officer, a veteran who had fought in previous wars, looked at the map and then back at the others. We can't afford to wait for answers. We need to act now, before we lose our chance. We don't know what their intentions are, but if we sit back and do nothing, we may never get the chance to defend ourselves. The leaders knew he was right. They had seen too many wars, too many tragedies. The sector had always relied on its position of neutrality, but they couldn't stay neutral if a human warship was bearing down on them. The memories of the Great War were still fresh for many, and the thought of the humans returning was enough to make even the bravest of leaders question everything they had worked for. As the minutes ticked by, the warship continued its course, unstoppable and unyielding. There was no turning back now. The human legacy was real, and it was heading straight for them. The people of the sector had always believed they were safe. They had never known the true power of the humans, and now they were about to find out. But the question remained, what did the humans want? Why had they returned after all these years? Were they here to conquer, or was there something else at play? The uncertainty weighed heavily on everyone, and the tension grew with every passing second. A glimpse of power. The warship's presence was undeniable now. It was no longer just a blip on a scanner. It filled the entire view of the sector's monitors. Every ship in the sector could see it clearly. The massive human warship, its sleek design shimmering in the light of distant stars. It seemed to pulse with energy, a living giant that dwarfed the smaller ships in the fleet. The sheer size of it was almost beyond comprehension, and its power radiated like a storm waiting to strike. The fleet commanders could do little more than watch as the human warship advanced. Every communication attempt had been met with silence. Every probe to scan its technology returned nothing but blank data. It was as if the warship was intentionally blocking every effort to understand it. The more the sector's forces tried to assess the situation, the less they knew. But one thing was certain: this ship wasn't here for a friendly visit. A chilling message suddenly appeared on every screen in the sector. "Clear the sector. We are coming through." The words were simple, but they carried an undeniable weight. The humans weren't asking for permission. They were commanding. The message was as cold as the space between the stars, and it sent a wave of unease through every officer in the command centers. "Why haven't they fired yet?" one of the commanders muttered, eyes glued to the screens. "They don't need to," another replied, voice tight. "The power they're showing is enough. Look at the readings. This warship is practically a weapon in itself. If it wanted to destroy us, it could do it in an instant." Across the sector, the fleet shifted, preparing for the inevitable. They had no choice but to make a stand. Ships powered up their weapons, and the shields were activated. But even as they did, they couldn't shake the feeling that it was all pointless. How could they face such an overwhelming force? Then, the warship fired a warning shot. The blast was not aimed directly at any ship, but instead it was a show of force, an explosion of energy that sent shockwaves across the sector. The blast lit up the dark expanse of space, briefly blinding anyone who dared to look. The shockwave from the blast knocked several smaller ships off course, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The power behind that shot was enough to send a clear message. The humans were in control. "Everyone, stay in formation," shouted one of the fleet leaders, trying to regain control of the situation. The ships moved quickly into position, but the warship didn't follow their movements. It simply continued its slow, unstoppable path, moving toward the heart of the sector, like an ancient predator stalking its prey. "Do they intend to fight us, or just pass through?" asked one of the officers, uncertainty in her voice. But before anyone could answer, the warship spoke again. "This sector is now under human jurisdiction. Stand aside or be destroyed." The words were clear. There was no negotiation. The humans were claiming this sector, and it didn't matter who stood in their way. The fleet commanders stared at their screens, helpless to respond. The human warship's weapon systems flared to life, and they could see the power of its weapons being harnessed. It was only a matter of time before it would open fire. Despite the fear, there was also something else, a strange sense of awe. The warship's technology was far beyond anything the sector had seen. It wasn't just advanced, it was perfected, built for dominance. Its weapons glowed with an intensity that was both beautiful and terrifying. It was a glimpse into the past, into an empire that had once ruled the galaxy. The sector's forces gathered their courage. "We may not stand a chance, but we will not back down," a commander said, his voice steady but filled with tension. "Prepare for battle. Every ship, engage. We will make our stand here." But as the fleet prepared to fight, the warship did something unexpected. It slowed down, coming to a near halt in front of the largest station in the sector. A silent message passed through the communication lines. "You have one chance. Prove your strength or be swept aside." A chill ran through the officers in the command center. The humans weren't here for a simple conquest. They were here to test the strength of the sector, to see if they were worthy of survival. The warship was not just a symbol of might. It was a test. Every ship in the sector's fleet felt it, the weight of the decision that had just been placed upon them. If they failed this test, they would be wiped out. But if they passed, the human warship might become an ally, or at least something they could learn to live with. The pressure was unbearable, and yet it was the only option. They had to prove their strength or face extinction. The warship, still hovering in front of them, waited. The sector's fleets were ready, but the true test had just begun. Would they fight with all their might, or would they crumble under the power of the human warship? The first contact. The silence between the sector's fleet and the human warship was unbearable. The tension was so thick, it felt like the entire galaxy held its breath. Every ship, every commander, every officer knew the stakes. They had to make a decision, and quickly. To resist meant certain destruction, but to surrender could mean becoming subjugated, losing everything they had worked for. The fleet had formed a defensive line, but it was clear the warship didn't see them as a threat. Its weapons were still powered up, but the humans had not fired again. Instead, the warship floated there, as if watching, waiting, observing. Why aren't they attacking? Alia, the young officer, whispered. Her eyes were fixed on the warship, and she couldn't help but feel the weight of its power. I don't know, said Commander Rin, his voice tight with frustration. It's like they're waiting for something. Then, without warning, a soft chime rang out in the command center. A message had arrived from the human warship. The fleet's commanders rushed to their consoles, eager to find out what the humans wanted. The message was brief, but it sent a shiver through everyone who read it. Prove your strength. If you have the courage to fight, we will meet you on the battlefield. If you do not, we will take this sector. Your time is running out. The implications were clear. The humans were not interested in simple conquest. They wanted something more. They wanted to see if the sector had the strength to stand against them. They'd wanted a fight, a test of power, a measure of who was truly worthy. A silence fell over the command room as the officers processed the message. The sector's fleet was ready to fight, but none of them could shake the uncertainty. How could they face an enemy that had technology centuries ahead of their own? And what if they failed the test? What if the humans didn't just take the sector but destroyed everything in their path? We cannot back down, Alia said, her voice firm. If we show weakness, we'll lose everything. But if we fight, we may stand a chance. We have to take the fight to them. Her words struck a chord with the others. The people of the sector had never been warriors, but they had survived through diplomacy, trade, and unity. Now, they had to fight for survival. It was a risk, but it was their only option. The fleet commanders quickly convened, strategizing their next move. They had to act fast, before the human warship decided to make the first move. The station commander suggested a multi-pronged attack, diverting the warship's attention, then striking with their best ships. It wasn't perfect, but it was all they had. We fight on our terms, and we show them that we are not weak, Commander Rin said, his voice filled with resolve. But just as they prepared to execute their plan, a new message came through. This time, the tone was different, softer, almost polite. We do not seek your destruction. We seek your strength. If you can show us your resolve in battle, we will reconsider our path. But know this, we will not hesitate to act if you falter. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. There was no doubt now. The humans weren't here to destroy them immediately. They were testing the sector's resolve. The question was whether the sector would pass that test. Alia stood up, her eyes locked on the view of the warship, her hands clenched into fists. We fight, and we show them that we are not to be underestimated. The humans may have power, but they do not have our unity. They do not have our will to survive. The fleet commanders exchanged glances. They had no choice. They had to act. If they failed this test, it would mean the end of their way of life. Prepare the fleet for battle, Commander Rin ordered. Let the humans see what we are made of. The ships in the fleet powered up, their engines humming with energy as they moved into formation. They had prepared for this moment, but now it felt real. The human warship loomed in the distance, its weapons still charged and ready. The sector's fleet, though smaller, was determined. They would not back down. The battle was about to begin. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3. As the fleet moved forward, they were about to find out whether they could stand against the might of the human warship. Could they prove their strength, or would they be swept aside as nothing more than dust in the wind? The battle begins. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of fear, determination, and uncertainty. As the sector's fleet powered up, its ships moved into formation. The sound of engines roaring to life echoed through the command centers. On every screen, the human warship loomed larger and larger, its dark silhouette cutting through the stars like a shadow. "We can do this," Commander Wren muttered to himself, though he wasn't sure if he believed it. They had no idea how powerful the humans were now, but they had no other choice but to fight. The fleet was ready, but it was far from certain that they would be enough. The human warship was unlike anything they had ever seen. The technology was centuries ahead, and its sheer size made it almost invincible. The first shots came as the human warship unleashed a series of energy blasts, targeting the leading ships in the sector's fleet. The beams of pure energy cut through the void, and the ships caught in their path disintegrated almost instantly. The force of the blasts sent shockwaves rippling through space, and the fleet commanders could only watch in horror as their best ships were destroyed with a single strike. "This is madness," one of the officers shouted, watching as another ship was engulfed in a massive explosion. "We're no match for them." But Commander Wren stood firm. "Keep fighting. We will not give up. We fight for our people. We fight for our survival." The sector's fleet fired back, their weapons lighting up the dark void with bright flashes of energy. The human warship's shields absorbed every blast with ease, not even flinching. It was clear now. The humans had technology far beyond what the sector could handle. The battle was intense. Ships weaved in and out of the line of fire, desperately trying to outmaneuver the human warship. But no matter what the fleet did, the warship was always one step ahead. It moved with the precision of a predator, its weapons striking with deadly accuracy. Alia, still at her post, watched as the scene unfolded before her. She had seen battles before, but nothing like this. The raw power of the human warship was overwhelming. Every time their ships fired, it felt like they were throwing pebbles at a mountain. The warship didn't even seem to notice. But she couldn't give in to fear. "Not now. Focus fire on its weapons systems," she ordered. "We need to disable their guns if we have any chance of survival." The fleet responded, focusing all their energy on the warship's weapons. Several shots landed, hitting the massive ship's outer hull, but the damage was minimal. It was like trying to scratch a boulder with a knife. The human warship retaliated with another devastating barrage, and the fleet's forces were pushed back. "They're too strong," one of the commanders shouted. "We can't hold them off for much longer." But just as all hope seemed lost, something unexpected happened. The human warship slowed its attack. For a moment, it paused, its energy weapons no longer charging. The sector's fleet, battered but still standing, took the opportunity to regroup. They had been pushed to their limits, but they weren't ready to give up yet. "Is it over?" Alia whispered, looking up at the warship. "Have we lost?" But the silence that followed the sudden pause was broken by a new message from the warship. This time, it wasn't a command. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple, chilling sentence. "Impressive. You have shown strength. Prepare for the next phase." The fleet commanders exchanged confused glances. What did this mean? The humans had just decimated most of their forces, and now they were acknowledging their strength. What was happening? Why had the warship stopped? "Prepare for what?" Commander Wren asked, his voice low, filled with both suspicion and disbelief. The human warship began to move again, but this time, it wasn't heading toward the fleet. Instead, it turned slowly, repositioning itself directly above the sector's largest space station. Its massive hull blocked out the stars, casting a long shadow over the station below. A message appeared across all screens, this time broadcast directly to the station itself. "We will test you further. Show us your true power. Prove that you can protect what is yours, and you will earn our respect. Fail, and you will be destroyed." The fleet commanders watched in shock. The test wasn't over yet. The humans were offering them a chance to prove their worth, but at a cost. The station below was a symbol of their unity, their home, and now it was the human warship's target. If they failed to defend it, they would lose everything. "We can't let them take our station," Alia said, her voice hardening. "We have to fight with everything we have left." The command was given. The remaining ships in the fleet regrouped, and for the first time in the battle, they attacked with all the force they could muster. The battle was far from over. The warship had paused to give them a chance, but now the final test had begun. Would they be able to protect their home, or would they lose everything? The countdown to the final phase had begun. The sector's fate rested on one last stand. "The battle begins," continued. The warship loomed overhead, its sheer size casting a shadow over the sector's largest space station. The silent threat it posed was palpable, and every ship in the fleet knew what was at stake. The human warship had given them a chance, but now it was clear. They had to prove their worth, or lose everything they held dear. Alia's pulse raced. She gripped the console in front of her, watching the warship's slow, deliberate movements. It wasn't just a ship, it was a force of nature, one that could wipe out everything in its path with a single command. But it had stopped, giving the sector's forces a moment to regroup, a chance to prove themselves. If they could hold their ground, they might just survive. "We can't let them take our station," Alia muttered under her breath, her voice steady but filled with determination. The station below was the heart of their sector, a symbol of their unity and their strength. Losing it would mean more than just the fall of a building. It would be the end of everything they stood for. Commander Rin's voice cut through the tension. "All ships, focus on the human warship. Prepare to defend the station at all costs. We cannot afford to fail." The remaining fleet was battered. Their numbers diminished after the brutal exchange of fire with the warship, but their resolve was stronger than ever. With Alia leading the charge, the fleet rallied, positioning themselves between the warship and the station, ready to face whatever came next. The human warship didn't respond with immediate fire. Instead, it activated a new set of weapons, massive energy cannons hidden beneath its hull. The beams pulsed with deadly light, aimed directly at the station. The sector's fleet knew they had mere seconds to stop it. "Target the cannons," Alia barked. "All ships, concentrate fire on the weapon systems." The fleet responded in unison, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts in an attempt to disable the human warship's weapons. The beams slammed into the warship's shields, causing bright flashes, but the human warship remained unscathed. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. The warship's shields absorbed the attacks with ease, and it seemed unfazed. The warship's response was swift and unforgiving. In retaliation, it fired one of its massive cannons. The beam shot out with blinding speed, cutting through space like a laser. The shockwave from the blast sent shockwaves through the sector, rattling the remaining ships in the fleet. A large defense ship in the front lines exploded into nothingness, its hull disintegrating in an instant. "No," Alia shouted, but the devastation was too fast. One of their strongest ships had been lost in a flash. The fleet's morale faltered, but Commander Rin's voice rang out, steady and strong. "Hold steady. We're not done yet." The battle intensified as the human warship continued to target the station. Its massive guns fired relentlessly, but the fleet's ships fought back with everything they had. They dodged, they weaved, and they fought in close quarters, using every advantage they could find. But it wasn't enough. The human warship was simply too powerful. Every time they struck, the warship absorbed it. Every time they pushed forward, it pushed back harder. Then, a new message flashed on all their screens. "You have proven your strength. This is your final chance." The message was brief, yet it felt like an ultimatum. The sector's fleet had shown courage in battle, but they had yet to land a significant blow. The human warship was too advanced, too prepared, and their forces were growing weaker. But they had not been completely defeated yet. Alia looked around at the remaining ships. She could see the wear on their faces, the exhaustion, but there was something else in their eyes. It wasn't fear. It was determination. The fleet was not ready to give up. Not yet. "Commander," Alia said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. "We need to take a risk. We've been fighting their weapons head-on, but what if we go for their engines? If we can disable their propulsion, they won't be able to move, and we might have a chance to finish this." Ren nodded grimly. "Do it. All ships, prepare to flank. Target their engines and propulsion systems. We take their movement away, and we can finish what we started." With a new plan in mind, the fleet shifted tactics. They divided into smaller groups, some feinting to the left, others right. The human warship, still confident in its power, didn't expect this new approach. The fleet launched a precise, coordinated attack, focused on the heart of the warship's propulsion systems. The first wave of fire slammed into the warship's lower engines, and the human warship shuddered. The force of the blast wasn't enough to cripple it, but it was a step in the right direction. More blasts followed, each hitting harder, aiming for the engine room. The warship began to slow, its momentum faltering, and for the first time in the battle, the sector's fleet saw a glimmer of hope. "We're slowing them down," Alia shouted, excitement filling her voice. "Keep up the pressure. They're not invincible." But the human warship wasn't finished yet. It unleashed one final devastating shot, aimed directly at the heart of the sector's fleet. The blast was so powerful that it knocked out half the remaining ships in a single strike. But the fleet's strategy had worked. The warship was struggling to maintain its momentum, its movements slowing. The final phase of the battle had begun, and the sector's fleet had proven one thing. They were not going to give up without a fight. The shocking twist. The battlefield was chaos, with ships darting in and out of the war zone, trying to avoid the brutal onslaught of the human warship. The once pristine sector was now a smoldering field of wreckage, the few remaining ships in the fleet giving their all to hold their ground. Every second felt like an eternity as the warship's weapons continued to rain down destruction. Yet despite the overwhelming odds, the sector's fleet kept fighting, desperate to survive. Alia's hands shook as she issued commands, guiding her remaining ships into new attack positions. The warship had slowed, its propulsion systems damaged by their focused attack. For the first time, the human ship wasn't moving with the terrifying speed it had shown at the beginning of the battle. But even as they closed in, more ships were falling, the odds becoming slimmer with each passing minute. "Commander Rin," Alia called urgently. "We've hit their engines hard, but it's still not enough. We need to finish this now, or we'll be wiped out completely." Rin's face was grim as he assessed the damage. "We've done everything we can. We've shown our strength, but they're not retreating. We've proven we can hurt them, but it's not enough to break them. We need another strategy. Fast." And just as Alia opened her mouth to respond, a new message flashed across the fleet's screens. "Your strength is impressive, but this fight was never meant to be a test of destruction." The words froze them all. A sudden silence filled the command room as Alia stared at the message in disbelief. It didn't make sense. The warship had just obliterated half of their fleet, destroyed their ships, and caused untold damage to their sector. And now it was saying the battle was not a test of destruction. "Is this some kind of trick?" Alia asked, her voice sharp with confusion. "What are they playing at?" Commander Rin's expression softened, a mixture of relief and suspicion in his eyes. "No, this was never about victory in the traditional sense. The humans wanted to see our resolve, our willingness to fight back. And we've shown them that, but they've made their point." Alia blinked. "What do you mean?" And then, the warship's voice came through again, its tone almost respectful. "We did not come to destroy you, but to understand your strength. We have watched your people, study your ways, and we believe you may have a place in the galaxy again. The choice is yours. Join us, and together we can reclaim what was lost. Reject us, and we will leave. But do not expect mercy in the future." A gasp spread throughout the command room as the implications of the message sank in. The human warship wasn't here to conquer them. It wasn't here to destroy them. It was offering them an alliance, a chance to join their ranks, to rise once more. The stakes had shifted completely. Alia couldn't believe what she was hearing. After all the destruction, the devastation, the deaths, they were being offered an opportunity. The humans had come to test them, to see if they were worthy of standing beside them. The battle had been a trial of strength, of willpower, of survival. "An alliance," Alia whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "But why? After all this, why offer us a chance?" Commander Rin's voice was filled with both caution and curiosity. "Perhaps they see potential in us. Perhaps they want to rebuild the human empire with new allies, ones who will not bow easily. They'd been watching us for a long time. The test wasn't about destroying us. It was about finding out if we had what it takes to survive and rise again. They want strength, and they see it in us." A long silence followed as the fleet commanders processed the message. To join the humans meant power, resources, and an undeniable place in the future of the galaxy. But it also meant giving up their independence, their sovereignty. Could they trust the humans after all the destruction? Could they live under their rule, even if it came with the promise of strength? "We don't have to accept," Rin said, his voice quiet but resolute. "But we must make the decision carefully. This is a chance to rebuild, to join something greater, or we could choose to stand alone and risk being destroyed at any moment." The warship remained still, its weapons powered down, awaiting the sector's response. The offer hung in the air like a lifeline and a trap, all at once. Alia's heart raced. She had fought for this, fought for her people to survive. She had witnessed the humans' power firsthand. But now, they were offering a path to something new, something bigger. "Commander," Alia said, her voice steady, but filled with resolve. "We've been through hell to get here, but I believe we can stand side by side with them. If we can gain their trust, maybe we can reclaim what we've lost and become more than we were before. Maybe we can truly rise again." Commander Rin nodded, his expression hardening into one of determination. "Then we accept. Let them know we are ready." The message was sent, confirming their decision. The human warship's response was almost immediate. The massive ship's lights flickered once, and a new message appeared on the fleet's screens. "Welcome to the future. Together, we will rebuild." The warship slowly turned, its massive engines roaring back to life. The battle was over. The sector had survived. And now it had a new future, a future with the humans, not as conquerors, but as partners. A new dawn. The tension in the command room had finally broken. The fleet's commanders, still reeling from the battle's intensity, stood together as the human warship slowly powered down its weapons and turned away, its massive engines beginning to hum once more. There was no immediate threat anymore, no blinding explosions or devastating shockwaves. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the sector had survived. Alia stared at the warship, now retreating into the dark expanse of space, leaving behind a quiet, almost eerie calm. The promise of an alliance lingered in the air, hanging between the fleet and the human warship like a fragile thread. Their future had just been reshaped in ways they hadn't fully understood, but there was no denying the weight of what had just transpired. "We did it," Alia whispered, though her voice was still filled with uncertainty. "We survived." But Commander Rin's face remained serious. "We didn't just survive. We've been given a chance. What we do with it now is up to us." The fleet commanders turned to face each other. The truth of Rin's words sank in. The sector had proven its strength, its will to fight, and now they had been offered an opportunity to rebuild, to join a force far greater than they had ever known. But with that opportunity came a heavy burden. The alliance with the humans wasn't going to be simple. They would have to adapt to their ways, learn from their technology, and most importantly, trust them. We have to make a decision, Rin continued. This isn't just about survival anymore. This is about our place in the galaxy. We can either stand on our own, with the scars of this battle, or we can embrace the future the humans are offering. We have to be ready for whatever comes next. Alia nodded slowly. She had seen what the human warship was capable of. The devastation, the power. It was enough to make anyone fear them. But what if the humans were offering something more than just power? What if together they could reclaim the galaxy that had once been theirs and build something stronger than before? We have to rebuild, she said finally, her voice gaining confidence. The human empire was destroyed for a reason. But they didn't give up. They kept fighting, and they came back. Now, they're offering us the chance to do the same. We don't have to be slaves or pawns. We can be allies, partners in something greater. Commander Rin looked at her with respect. I agree. We'll rebuild, and we'll stand with them, not as subordinates, but as equals. As the fleet began to organize and regroup, word spread quickly across the sector. The people who had lived in fear, uncertain about the future, began to hear the news. The humans weren't here to destroy them. They were here to offer them a chance to rise again. Some citizens celebrated the victory, their hopes lifted by the possibility of a new future. Others were skeptical, unsure of what this alliance would mean for their freedom, their autonomy, and their way of life. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and technology exchanges. The humans shared some of their advanced knowledge with the sector, offering their ships, weapons, and resources in exchange for a partnership. It wasn't a simple offer. It was a partnership that required trust and understanding. The sector would need to learn the ways of the humans, and the humans, in turn, would have to adapt to the sector's ways of life. It was a delicate balance, and there was no guarantee it would work. But the first steps toward this new future had been taken. The sector began to rebuild its cities, repair its fleets, and forge a new identity. One that would thrive in an uncertain galaxy, but one that would no longer be caught off guard by outside forces. They were no longer a weak, neutral sector at the mercy of stronger empires. They were allies of the humans, and that came with both power and responsibility. For the first time in years, the people of the sector had hope. They had faced the unimaginable and had come out the other side, stronger, united, and more determined than ever before. They had fought for their survival, and now they would fight to reclaim the galaxy alongside the humans. Alia stood on the balcony of the newly rebuilt command station, gazing out into the vastness of space. The stars twinkled brightly, just as they always had, but now they seemed different, full of potential. The galaxy, once filled with unknown dangers, now held endless possibilities. Do you think we've made the right choice? Alia asked, turning to Commander Rin. Rin stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the stars as well. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. We're no longer alone. We have allies, and together, we can face whatever comes next. The galaxy has changed, and so have we. This is just the beginning. The human warship was gone now, but its message remained. The sector had proven its strength. Now, with the humans at their side, they would rebuild. The future was uncertain, but they had one thing on their side: hope. And that, for the first time in a long while, was enough.